Okay, let's start this off by saying, guys, I and Ever, I can speak for myself, but Ever told me that we are not chefs.
Oh no, I've never done this before.
This is more about hanging out. We're gonna talk with you guys. I want to ask Ever some questions. No, it's good stuff.
I'm just kidding.
What are we making? We're gonna make pizza. We're not here to teach you how to make pizza.
No, we're not. I've never done this, you guys. I've never done it.
We're teaching you how to have patience with people who don't know how to make pizza.
Anybody Italian out there is going to be screaming, really mad.
Today, I'd like her to share with you guys her extremely interesting story. When I heard this story, I was like,
I didn't know anybody would care.
oh my gosh, guys, you will not. Okay, I'm going to stop. Maybe stop. Ever has experience with Scientology from when she was younger.
It's true.
It's true.
I'm one of the few that don't know to say if they're in or out, but I guess Tori was like, you were in.
She was in, guys.
But I didn't know it.
She was so in that she doesn't know how in she was.
No, I mean,
only after she's telling me some of these stories am I like, whoa, Ever, you were in. So I'm going to shut up and probably interrupt a lot of more times.
When I was really young.
At an innocent age.
I was a teenager, yeah. I joined, so L. Ron Hubbard thought it would be a great idea to recruit actors to promote. That's obviously, it was effective. I don't really talk about it that much because it's so hard to find information on it. And I'm like, how do I even explain this? There's no videos, there's only a few people that talk about it.
I haven't heard the story from anyone besides Ever of somebody being sucked in this way, and then after I heard it from Ever, I'm hearing a lot of other people also. This is way more common,
and I don't know why they don't talk about it.
And people don't talk about it.
I think that they just not like streamers or something. Well, Jason Begay, he was the first one I saw. Yeah, so he talks about it, and I posted a little video about Bill Maher. He audited the class, and if you want to see a really funny video, his podcast, he explains his story was 99.9% identical to my first day. Okay, if this is boring,
it's not boring. Stop it.
All right.
I want to hear it.
Okay.
You guys want to hear it.
Be prepared to be bored. I'll just say that's I was into acting and all that, and I thought, well, let's do an acting class in LA, but I lived kind of an hour outside of LA. So and I didn't have a car or anything. I was really young. So my dad's like, all right, well, I'll drive you if you get into an acting class. So there you have it. So I heard that was a good acting class. It was called the Beverly Hills Playhouse. The Beverly Hills Playhouse was a recruiting acting kind of academy, only we didn't know it. It was a long time ago, and I don't even, YouTube wasn't
the episode of South Park wasn't out yet.
No, none of that. And Milton Casalas was the leader of it, and he was a big time Scientologist who I guess also did this, acting academy, and he was very successful. You would see him directing different scenes in movies with Claudia Schiffer, and I can't remember all the actors, but blah blah blah, all the Scientology actors. And I guess his job was to maybe bring, or one of his jobs or expectations was to, bring the master class of actors over to the church. So he had the master class, and people that were in his class were movie stars. Some of them were this is a while ago when they had more actors or whatever. And so so I was kind of talked my way into getting into the advanced class. It was one class below him. I was able to skip the intermediate beginning. I don't know how I did it. I had an acting agent. I did all the talkers, and my dad was like, she's gonna go in the advanced class. But we didn't know anything about Scientology. So I get into the acting class. I've never been into this kind of acting class in LA, a scene study class. I was still in school and doing acting classes where I was at, but nothing like a Los Angeles scene study class. So I didn't really have anything to compare it to. So when you hear the stories, now it's so crazy because it's such extreme red flags. But back then, and before you get in the class, they make you read a book of attitudes and ethics and reacting minds, and they test you, and it's just as or more important that you have the right attitude and all the kind of rules. I was by far the youngest in that advanced class, and they used to call me jailbait. And no one was that young in there, and they thought that I wasn't in the master's class. No one can get in there unless you're like, you go through something. And by the way, Beverly Hills Playhouse was purchased by somebody else who's not a Scientologist, so no need to troll them, but I've never gone back.
I would totally go with you.
My first day was exactly the same as like Bill Barr's first day. If you already heard this story, it's gonna be boring, but my first day in class, I was like, back then I was kind of like really and kind of socially like eccentric, you know.
Back then?
Yeah.
Wait, all back then?
I grew out of that. I grew out of
yeah,
that.
me too. I did too. I did too.
So basically, my first day of class, after getting trained on ethics and attitudes, and I knew you weren't allowed to speak about anything that happens to the class, even to your, they said husband, best friend, but they made it like sound normal. They're like, you know, if other people tell you, we're going to make you the best actor, we're going to do all this, and if other people tell you, like, you put up a scene, and then if other people say that was great, or that wasn't that great, or maybe you should have done this better, it takes away from the teacher. You know, like the teacher is a master, and you know, we want you to only listen to the teacher, so only people are allowed to say great job. So it kind of like sounded like, okay, well that makes sense. That makes sense, you know, just to have the teacher, you know, input. And then it kind of like slowly went to, yeah, make sure you don't, you know, get input from, you know, your family, because, you know, they're gonna, same idea, get in the way of like our critique. Oh, okay, well that makes sense. And then it went into like, maybe don't tell anything about the class, you know, because they're like the public. They used words like public and citizens back, like the lower public. The same as Scientology kind of uses, you know, like, you guys are the public, you know, they don't really get it, you know. So went into that, and you're like, oh, okay. And then it went into like, hey, maybe you shouldn't go home for Christmas.
I'm telling you, when I'm listening to the story, I'm like, girl?
It quickly went there, you know. And it was like,
this isn't as bad as it gets. Go.
No, it was like, okay, but you were like, that happened. Like Tori uses words like, once you're on the mind control train, and it's true. Like I was already in the mind control trains, which like once you're on it, they can like, it's a slow thing. But I'm gonna give you bullet points, because you're probably thinking, well, I wouldn't do that. But there was. You know how it works. It's like it's a
gradual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This pizza needs to get into therapy. It's very, it looks like
Does it have a reactive mind?
No, it doesn't have a reactive mind. No, it does have a reactive mind, and it needs to get sec checked. By the way, we got sec checked. We had ethics officers. I thought every acting class had ethics officers. This must be normal, people. Doesn't everybody have an ethics officer at their acting class?
What would your ethics officer do in regards to the acting stuff?
She did a lot. She's a nice girl too, but she did a lot. So basically, the first day of class, I go in, and the class is very organized. Okay, so, well, my first day basically was like this, and this was like the structure of every day. So there's scene studies. So basically, you put up, like, I think it was like a 8 or 9 minute scene, and you're obligated to put up 2 scenes a month. You have 2 classes per week, with Monday and Wednesday. I can't believe I remember this. It was from 7 to 11 at night. My poor dad had to drive me in like rush hour traffic for like 2.5 hours, and we just argued. Love my dad, but you know, like I was young. I'm like, he wanted me to talk about my acting, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, because I was all nervous, you know. I'd be like, I would be like. My dad was strict, and I had an attitude, you know. You can't believe that, can you? Okay, so my first day, I was sitting in class, and at 7 o'clock, if you're late, you're fucked, because they don't. It's like a theater show, you know. You don't. At 7 o'clock, you have to be in the class, sitting down. Apparently, you know the dynamic scale that L. Ron Hubbard. We had that too. So you have to sit on the edge of your seat and be smiling. If anybody says, "How's your day?" you have to say, "Wait." Well, you had to be very present, very on board. You had to be like, "Yay!" You know. You learned very quickly that. I mean, they will call you out in class if you look like you're slouching. They'll be like, "What's wrong with you?" Go see the ethics officer. So you learn very quickly that it's not like normal school. When the class actually starts, it's like an 8-minute scene. The curtains open. there's an 8-minute scene, and then after the scene, they come to the edge of the stage. You're already trained never to give any critique. You only clap. It doesn't matter if it sucked. It doesn't matter if it's great. They come to the edge of the stage. It's usually 2 people in the scene. And then the teacher says, he was very like, you guys, you should know, if you look up my teacher, his name is Al Mancini. He's passed away. But he was in famous movies back in the day. And he was very like, I don't know the word for it, but you know, like, he knew his importance, you know what I mean? Like, he was cool, I looked up to him, but he knew his importance. So he wouldn't even say words sometimes. Sometimes he would just point, like, you go first, but he would just go like that. And then they would take turns explaining the research of this scene. Now, this is where the strictness comes in. You are expected to do shit. I mean, it's too long of a story, but if you were playing a murderer, you know, you have to go to you have to go through the list, you know, of all the things that you prepared for your character. I went to a gun range, I went to this, I went to that, and there's only 10 days, you know, because you're in class 4 days out of those 2 weeks, and you're expected to put up a scene. So you only have 10 days. So this is kind of the making of like how you don't go home or go anywhere. You will get slaughtered for, I mean, I can't even explain to you the slaughtering you will get if you don't show how much you worked on putting on your scene. You just don't have time for anything else besides work and rehearsal, and then the admin groups that are all Scientologists. So then after you know, maybe you spend 10 minutes, I did this, your partner spends 10, 15 minutes, and then if the scene was good, the teacher will give all his notes and it'll be good. If it's not good, oh, the slaughter is so bad that you're like, it's almost abusive. But they're using like Scientology terms, and like they apply Scientology even to your acting because you have no excuses. You should have stayed up all night and rehearsed. You should have stayed up. Oh, there's no such thing as sleep. There's no such thing as sickness. There's no such thing. That's the kind of thing that they prepare you for. You are like in like a military camp of acting, but if that makes sense. I just thought this was a strict class, you know, like a really strict class, but it's good for me. But there's so much conditioning in between. It's like hard to explain. But my first day of class, before the scenes even start, the ethics officer comes out and she jumps up. Everything is like, go, 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 you know, yeah, you know, so corny, yeah. Everything is like, you know, you have to be excited all the time. You have to say it's great, just like Scientology. Or there's another camera. So the ethics officer would like come out. She would like jump up on stage. Her name was like Shauna. I'll never forget. But she would be like, "Hi, everybody. Who has epic wins?" Okay, so you know Scientology, right? Wins is epic wins in Scientology, and basically everybody go, yeah, this is right before the class really started. Me! And then she was like, yeah! And then somebody would jump up on stage and like tell what win they had that week, right? They would like, I got a call back in blah, 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 blah show. And everybody would like stand and go like this. Yeah! Like for 10 minutes, I swear to God. I was so startled. I was in terror. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, did I hear that right? Just call back, you know. It was like a thunderstorm of applause for like, and I was scary, and it was like rapid fire. And then and then somebody would come up and they're like, I got an audition for blah 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 blah, and same enthusiasm, like, yay, for like 5 minutes, and I was like, holy shit. And if I try to ask like somebody to my right or left, I'm like, what is this about? They would like kind of just smile, with, you know, really big with big eyes, but they weren't like really staring at anything. And it's so funny because Bill Maher said the same thing. It was weird. They were clapping, but they weren't staring at anything. You know, like so then after like several of these, she would say, "Are you ready for the teacher?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, are we having a special guest teacher?" And she's like, "Are you guys ready?" Al Mancini! And he would be standing like from the curtain. Everything was like big production to show how important it is, how lucky you are to be here with us. And that's actually a cult thing. That's a cult thing. There's to brainwash you, there's like always like a hype person or person that comes out and says,
a warm up
yes,
person.
A warm up person.
The audience warm up.
Yes. it's this person's so important coming out. He look at everybody so excited. That's literally like Hassan, like Steve Hassan, the doctor, cult doctor, is part of it. Like it's part of it. So she's like, Al Mancini, and I'm thinking this is a special guest, and he walks in like this, like super important, and everybody stands. Whoa, yeah, like clapping like crazy, and he doesn't say a word. He just comes in. He's a big Scientologist too. Comes in, he waves like there's a big, like good night New York kind of thing. He waves at everybody. We stand and applause. And I remember asking this person, I'm like, is that a special guest teacher? And he's like, no, it's our teacher. And I'm like, oh, okay. This is how that was the next 2.5 years we had to do this every class,
2.5 years.
Somewhere between 2 and 3, yeah. It was like every class you had to do that. And so he comes out, he doesn't say anything, he just like signals to the lighting guy, sits down and gives a signal, doesn't say anything. So there's this grandiose presentation, and it's really part of a cult thing. It's really part of a cult thing. I wish I could articulate it better. But so then the scene starts, 8-minute scene, maybe 20 minutes of them explaining themselves. That if it's not a good scene, he slaughters you. And that's part of it too. He says, what's going on with you, Mindy? What's going on?
I didn't get enough sleep last night.
Oh, okay, so now you learn. I made something like this in the beginning. I said something like this because my dad was driving me, so I don't have a car. It's an hour away, and I had like this little waitressing job at like 5 a.m., like the breakfast shift at 5 a.m. The class gets done at 11, goes late till midnight. When am I supposed to, my poor dad, like he's gonna drive me home, and by the time I get there, I have like 3 hours of sleep before my job. So my scene sucked. Like I sucked in that class in the beginning because it was like I had to learn the way their mentality and their lingo, I'm like, wow, this must be a really big deal. I got in this advanced class and this is like a serious deal, and everybody's like, no one can tell you details because you're not allowed to, not even allowed to talk to your husband or wife, but about it. So we have every hour in the hour, we would have like a 5-minute break. And we were allowed to go in the alley, people would smoke, but we were trained not to say anything. We were only allowed to say, good job. Doesn't matter how shitty it was, but, during, like, let's say you put up a scene and it wasn't it wasn't that great. So you sit down, you're like, I did this and this and this, but, I guess I could have done this better. I didn't get enough sleep or whatever, or that's what I say. So I didn't get enough sleep. They said, why aren't you, my scene partner told on me, and he says, well, she didn't come up, she didn't rehearse with me. And I said, well, my dad's driving me, like he's old, like we're leaving at midnight, and I have my waitressing job. So they wanted me to rehearse. I had my dad, I don't know, sleep in the car and rehearse after class because I was in town. And I said, well, I won't get any sleep. I'll have to keep pulling, I'll have to pull all-nighters, and my job's at 5 a.m. That's in the very beginning when I didn't know
what was coming next, guys. Listen,
it was so bad. It was so bad. It was like, excuse me, I'm sorry, what? And after my scene, I said, well, it's just that I won't sleep because my job's at 5 a.m. and it's like an hour away. My dad's driving me, so maybe I can find a way to come here on a different day, but staying after class was kind of hard. And they're like, I remember my teacher getting up before he even slaughtered me, and him going, you're complaining about being tired. And it's like 60 people in there, it's like, and I'm young, I'm terrified. And I'm like, let's just say I won't get any sleep. I thought this was a normal thing. And he stood up, and I remember him looking, if the class was here, he was looking back at the class, smiling. That kind of look, and everybody...
you guys know what's coming.
You know what's coming. And they're like... And I remember him smiling, not even saying anything, and standing up, and not even addressed as such a peasant, a fool for saying that, And him looking, and I remember the class members going... agreeing with him, we know what's coming. Yeah, and he said something it was something like, does anybody else here have complaints of being tired? And I remember them laughing, going, no. No. And then he turned to me and he said, the first day he gave me the fair game rundown. Like he said, and this rundown, he says, death is not an excuse, sleep is not an excuse. And he just went into this whole thing of like, I'm here for you. Are you going to be here for me? Or you want to be here 95%? Or you want to be 100%? It could have been like a half an hour slaughter in front of the whole class, and included applauding, for different points he made. And me just going, oh, and then, just realizing, like, don't slouch, because he yelled at somebody else that was slouching. It started that way, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm here for you. Like, okay, you're here. Like, he's so important. He's coming for me. Why am I not, and the whole presentation of this importance is in my head, and how special and lucky I am to be beyond this class and all that. So I'm like, okay. So then my dad would have to like sleep at a family member's house, or I have to end up borrowing his car. Like I don't even think I drove on the freeway. Like eventually, I don't even know when, but I had to like take the car. So then the next excuse I had was I ended up, they got me to kind of move out. They got me to
Alexa, stop.
Disconnect.
Listening.
She's feisty.
They're listening.
So then the next thing that happened was like,
Alexa, stop.
they kind of like got us to not go home for holidays and whatever. It was explained away. There was a lot of explaining, and there were also exercises. Before I was allowed, oh my God, I just remember this. Before I was allowed to put up my first scene, I had to do a song and dance exercise. And everybody in the class was like, oh God, it was so scary. They're like, good luck with your song and dance exercise. Good luck, like on breaks. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, it's gonna be great. Don't worry, you're gonna be like a new person. I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And they're like, don't worry, the song and dance. They're like, you're not allowed to put up a scene in this class. You're not really even initiated into the class until you do this exercise. And they're like, you're scheduled in like a week or two. I remember it was like a week away or two. And I said, oh, and they're like, don't worry. And I was like, okay, they couldn't say too much.
I wasn't worried before, but now I'm a little worried.
There was like this all like excitement, but like nervous energy. Like, what the hell am I? And then the day of the song and dance, I had no idea what it was. There was a lot of nudity in the class too. Like people would do nude scenes and stuff. I don't know if they were trying to get over something. I don't know. But I was seeing that too.
Nudity from the choice of the students?
Yeah, like picking like a scene, but they wanted to like commit. The curtain would open, and sometimes it would be like a sex, like they weren't really having sex. But I was like, oh no. Yeah, it'd be it'd be like a scene from a movie. They could be simulating things.
Okay.
They said you can't put up a scene until you do this exercise, because this exercise is gonna like prepare you. It's like you're gonna get over all they would call it hang-ups and the considerations. I don't know if that's Scientology word, but like the what ifs, we're gonna rid your reactive mind, or so you're a vessel that's gonna make the scene so much better. Okay, whatever. So I come in, they're like, you guys ready? When I showed up, everybody's like, it's your turn. You ready? I'm like, Jesus Christ, what's gonna happen to me? Am I gonna be sacrificed? Like, it was really that scary. So I come in, and they do their the winds shit, and then tonight's the night. And the new girls, blah blah blah, let's call her to the stage, and they're like, and they said prepare a song, but it's not about singing. You're just like, it could be Happy Birthday. So now I know that this was like a really good tool for brainwashing. They have me come up in front of everybody, so people can hear you. And I feel like this is probably so boring. If it's boring,
no, it's not boring. It's not boring.
Okay. So the song and dance exercise was, I stood up there, and at first you'll think this is like, oh, this is acting. It's not. It's innocent, whatever. But
oh, I'm gonna take the pizzas out now. Take that time.
So the teacher comes up. They say, put your hands down and stand there in front of everybody. You have to be vulnerable, and it doesn't matter what song you picked, and you just start singing like Happy Birthday, and then the teacher comes up and he starts circling around you like a shark. He's like, sing. And then humans have all these like nervous tics that we don't even realize it. Like we'll scratch our head, or we'll fix our pants, or do something like this. Even the simplest lift arm, he'll yell like, keep your arm down and keep singing. Oh shit. happy birthday. Look at the audience, to you, happy birthday. Get your arm down, you. And it started that way, and I was like, okay, I see what's going on here. He wants me to not cover like my emotions. Okay, fuck. Okay, here we go. This shit went on. It could go somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. Okay.
How long did yours go?
Somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. And he circled around, and it was just like, it started that way. Oh, and by the end of the hour, you are broken the fuck down. I mean, he was like, keep singing, look at them. He rid you of like all of your, like anything that, like that. And then he would start to say, now march in a circle, stomp on the people, then the people that said that you could never do it. Keep singing, now look up. And no one gets through this exercise without having like meltdowns, because I know that sounds like it's just very easy what I'm explaining right now.
Sounds like it's made to melt you down.
Yeah, it's exactly, it's the breakdown exercise. They break you down, but they may make it sound like it's for acting, and it's for, so you can have better scenes, you know. And they even used an example of like, you shouldn't be in here worried about what your hair looks like, or what the boy sitting next to you looks like. You need to like, or to look cool or whatever. I thought that makes sense. Like, get all your embarrassing shit out. Like, and sometimes he would say, if you want to do the song and dance exercise naked, physically, we're cool with that too. We want to see how much you don't care. You know, you don't care what people see of you, like that. I was like, no, I'll pass on that.
To even bring that up sounds like he's encouraging, or that you might be an extra favor for doing it. Like,
yeah,
I know you're not coming out and saying like that he said it, but
yeah,
listening to it, it feels to me like
you're braver, like you're more committed. Yeah,
that you're
that you're maybe more committed. So after like him yelling at you, and then in the middle of the song, he's like he'll say things like, "Were you ever abused?" You know, like, hey, it's so crazy. Like, he'll go through your childhood of abuse and make the song, and now scream at them, happy birthday! You're like a fucking psycho up there. To you, keep your arm down, happy birthday! Were you sexually abused? What? Happy birthday! I'm sexually abused. Keep your arm down. It's like, he like fucks up your emotions, and then he rids you of any comforting ritual that you would have. And when you ask them, how long will this last? They say, until you get it. Until you get it. So like, if you're like crying and you're like, because he said like some dumb, like crazy shit, like, what about your mom or your dad good to you? Did you get sexually abused? Did you and they go through that, and he's like, but keep singing happy birthday. Now you're crying, you can't wipe a tear. You have to get to the place of like full broken down. You can just like have snot running down your face and like that. So, and afterwards there is like this endorphin rush, obviously, because that's how it works, you know.
Probably because it's over.
Yeah, it's over. And then everybody's clapping for you. That's a big part in cults. The reward system too. With any brainwashing, there's a reward system. Everybody's like, you did amazing. You did so good. You did so good. And then they take a break, and you're out there, and they're only allowed to say great job, but they're like, oh wow, it was a great job. And you're like, I really did it. After that, I started putting up scene works, and then it was not going home for Christmas. Well, first they got me to move out. Well, one time I put up a scene, and then the teacher was like, he did the whole thing that they do of like, what's going on in your life? Your scene sucks. And then I would say, oh, well, I have a fight with my dad or whatever.
I just don't want them to see it.
You're right.
It's so bad. It's such a fail.
She's too embarrassed to come in front of you.
It's such a fail. I don't want you to see it. Continue.
And so, it started being like, well, this is affecting your scene work, this is affecting your stuff, you should move out. So, I mean, I kind of just picked up in one day and like moved out with no car, and I moved to the most shittiest area ever. But I think my dad got me, either let me borrow his car at first, but then I had no car. So I got a waitressing job a little while, and I kind of lived where I could take a bus. And so I was paying for my class, and I was like waitressing at a freaking place. I don't know, I could probably tell, just some stupid restaurant. And so I moved out, and then my parents later said they were really scared for me. And this is actually part of how I got out. My parents kind of convinced me that they would pay part of my class later. I don't know if it was a year, I have no sense of time. It could have been a year down the line or something. They said, if you will pay for your class if you move into a safer neighborhood, because I couldn't afford it. And then a random argument happened with my parents that's just so ridiculous. It actually was really stupid funny. But they stopped paying for my class, and I was already too scared to make the excuse, because when I didn't have enough money for class, they would say, money's not an excuse. They say money's not an excuse. Go see the ethics officer and write down 50 ways that you can make money, and even sucking dick is okay.
Yeah. So I was actually not wanting to put an ice in there.
Yeah.
Tell them this again. No, this is.
I didn't suck.
No. But the way that
they kind of like just said that, I'm like,
as a young, as any, right?
Okay.
As anybody, she says, I don't have money, and they say, tell them.
Like in the beginning, like I didn't,
This makes me so mad.
Yeah. It was just casual. It was casual. It was like, go to the ethics officer, because that was like my second excuse. Like, oh, I'm short on class, and
On cash.
And cash. And they're like, go to the ethics officer. She'll help you. You need to stay after class, like almost like punishment, like in school, and write down 50 ways that you can make money. And we don't judge you. Even if you suck dick, it's fine. You just write that down. You should be using everything that you can to become successful. It's okay to lie, steal, or cheat in order, and I think that's under fair game, right? There's something in Scientology that literally says it's okay to lie, steal, and cheat. And I didn't know, nobody said the word Scientology, no one, except I think one plant did, but I didn't understand. There was like one plant in there that had this big argument, and said, everybody's Scientologist in this class, and she, and then they kicked her out right away, and the security took her away. But I still didn't understand what that was, so basically I moved out. Then my parents negotiated somewhere down the line that they would pay for my class, and the only way that I kind of got out, because I was being prepped for the master class, and by the time that I got out, Milton was already coming to our class. I was doing really well in the class by that time, so they were like, okay, she's getting close to going to the master class. Then Milton would come in and he would say, I have a seminar, and on reactive minds and all that, and you all have to come. Like, it's $500. Like, I'm a waitress, and he's like, you all have to come. I wanted to do acting, but this was a lot, I didn't, this was a lot of extra shit. So he's like, you have to come to my seminar. It's on attitude and ethics and blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, who? And then he would make you sign up right there. And he says, who's not coming? And there was this new girl. She kind of had your spirit, very sweet, very innocent. And she's like, oh, I'll never forget this. And by then I was in there for a while. It was probably, I don't know, under 6 months before I was leaving. And, or 3 months or whatever. I was towards the end. I was doing really great. I knew the lingo. I was on board. I was brainwashed, all that. So she was like, oh, I had my sister's wedding is in Chicago. I already have plane tickets. I'm her best girl.
Oh,
whatever. Right. Yeah, maid of honor. I remember my stomach dropping, and she was in tears. He slaughtered her verbally, and this man has books on he says you will never have a temper. You'll be clear as never has a temper. You don't have sick. Oh, they also they discourage going to doctor. Cancer can be healed with mind. All that stuff in our class too. Some people be like, I got to get treatment for this, and then they. So it's all Scientology. In Scientology, they don't want you taking medicine. They don't want, a lot of people die from sicknesses because they don't want you taking medicine or whatever. So
Tori suffered grand mal seizures.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let her take her medicine and things like that. She suffered a lot.
Yeah. So when Milton had something to promote, he would come in and say, you all have to come. And I didn't have any money, and it was between $400 or $500, and it was a 10-hour day. It's one of these fucking seminars. You go Friday, you imagine. So I was sitting in the auditorium, all the actors were there in the front. They did they reenacted the reactive mind. They reenacted it. You want to see it?
I'd love to see it.
They brought up Jeffrey Tambor, a well-known actor. They brought other well-known actors up, and they said the reactive mind is like the snake. And then they had people, do the whole snake thing. They were doing a snake. I was like, what the hell is happening here? There were so many things that happened at that seminar that was so bizarre. Reenactments of your reactive mind. The opening of the seminar, they said, who's skeptical? And it was a whole auditorium of people. Only one boy raised his hand. His mother forced him there. And he said something like, he's like, oh, they did the speech of, I'm here for you, you should be here for us. And if you're either in or out, you're either with me or against me kind of vibe. And they test you before they even before I give myself to you, who here even has 1% of like skepticism? Like, I guess the seminar was gonna like do something to our mind and we had to trust it or whatever. And one boy like raised his hand, like a normal kid, and he's like, you, and imagine the whole auditorium, how humiliating this is. Stand up, and why are you skeptical? And he's like, well, I don't know, it just seems kind of weird. And Milton shitted on this kid in front of his mom for like 10 to 15 minutes of why he's like basically a loser, pathetic, that is his reactive mind. He went through all the Scientology like words, and then he said, you can leave. And when the kid left, the whole auditorium stood up and applauded that he was leaving.
And his mom stayed, or?
And then he says, you're the mom, and he had her stand up, and he goes, what do you think about that? And she said, I think that's great. That was the saddest, that was
How old is this kid?
He looked like a teenager or something, but I don't know, maybe somewhere between 17 and 20 years old. And this kid walked through, I'll never forget, past me because I was in the very back. And the whole place was clapping, and because he said my mom brought me when he's like, why are you here? Because my mom brought me. She must have been a Scientologist. And then when she stood up after that humiliation, and he said, what do you think about what I just did? She says, I think that's great. And she was smiling and enthusiastic. Everybody clapped for her. And I thought, oh my God, this poor kid, like I would be traumatized for like forever if like my parent did that. So I did those seminars and another seminar and exercises, and I didn't really go home for Christmas or holidays. They explain it like, Mindy, you're doing so much good. You're making so much progress. And the thing is like you go home for Christmas, you're sitting around the dinner table, you have some jerk parent or uncle or aunt who's like, are you still trying to act, Mindy? Why don't you get a real job? And they throw these little things, they throw darts into your insecurities. And then you come back to class after the new year, and we have to reverse all the damage that your family did. They planted this insecurities. Like we might even have to do the song and dance exercise on you again. So it's just better if you don't go home. And then you're like, okay,
Do you actually agree, or you're like, oh, well, I guess that's the rule now?
The first thing was just doing what they wanted me to do. Like, okay, don't slouch. Some girl just like completely shitted on for slouching. Like, you're not here for me. There was a dynamic scale. You had to be like 1 through 10. You can't be on a low level. You can't be like, yeah, that was great. No. And that's totally Scientology. And that's also brainwashing because you're like, oh, it must be working for everybody else because they're like, oh, yes, I had so many wins, But inside, you think you're the only one that is unhappy. So somewhere down the line, I was believing them. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense. But I always felt like something's off. Like when they would like yell at people and like kind of go too far. Like they outed one kid who did a bad scene, and then he's like, tell me what's going on in your life. They want to know your personal shit, but what's going on in your personal life that you're bringing in? What are you bringing in? Another Scientology thing, right? So they say, what are you bringing in? Like if you get our word, what did you do to bring it in, right? So so this kid was like, oh, I'm having problems with my parents, and he didn't tell anybody he was gay. But my teacher says, why don't you just get over that and just admit like whatever your sexuality is fine, that you're gay. And he just like outed him. And I just remember the terror, and he had to make a decision in that 1 second, like to admit this, It was just, I remember thinking like, this is kind of abusive, kind of wrong. But then I would say, that's my bad attitude. That's, they have you questioning your own thoughts. Because that's the genius part when you don't know. They get you to brainwash yourself. So once they get you on board with this, they can tell you to do anything. Because if you disagree with them, you think it's you. But I never even knew I was in Scientology. And then like right before they were gonna move me to Milton's class and probably take me to the church, I had such a stupid fight with my parents. They stopped paying for my class. I was already not enjoying the class, but I thought that's the only thing I have going for me. They think they
make
make
you think,
yeah, you're a loser. This is the only thing you have going for you. You know what I mean? Like,
you need them.
oh yeah, but I instinctively wasn't happy. So I was like already behind on like class money, and I didn't want to get yelled at. I didn't want to be sitting there writing 50 ways of how I can make money. So I just didn't show up. When I didn't pay for class, I was like, oh, I'm so fucked, because next time I have to explain this why I'm late. I didn't show up because I didn't have like the rent, the money for class. So then I didn't show up again. I was like, oh, you're just digging yourself a hole. Now I'm fucking double trouble. And then my parents like had a fight with me, and then I didn't have the money, and I just stopped going. And I'm like, I dug myself such a hole that I stopped going, but it literally saved me from the next step, because I would have done it. I would have, if Milton's like, come to the church once you get in the master's class. Jason McGay was in there. Watch his interview with Tori Magoo, because that was the first way I found out that I was even in Scientology. I came out with the anonymous protesters. I met Tori for the first time. She probably wouldn't even remember. It was years ago. And then the second time I ever met her was at your barbecue.
By the way, the story isn't over.
Like, they just, they would kind of get mad that me and my dad would argue. The car ride in traffic there, 7 p.m. and, traffic hours, we had this long ride. So we would fight, and then it would affect my acting. And so they said, they drill you. That's another thing. You can't keep any secrets from them. Any secrets. They'll say, what's going on with you? And it's like in front of the whole class, and you almost think they can read your mind at some point, and you're like, oh, my dad, run away here. And then he started saying, well, I think it's time to move out. And, it kind of ended up being a good thing, but I moved to like the ghetto. Like, I lived in
little ever, guys.
I lived in the ghetto, and I had no car. It was so frightening that when my parents came and saw, I'm like, sorry, I can't pay like rent, and I can't pay this acting class. And then they made the deal.
And all the surprise seminars that they
there's always, you had to be a part of admin groups too. I was like, you end up not hanging out with anybody outside this class. Like, the admin groups was like to help you get an acting job. And the other one is, they said if you don't get an acting job within a certain amount of time, it could have been 4 to 6 months, I can't remember, Milton puts you on a thing called terrorist theater. That sounds fun. You go on terrorist theater, meaning if you don't get a job, then they say you haven't got a job for this long a time, like 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, and because you have to report your jobs. And you have to report, like, they had me doing some weird shit to get jobs. And it was like some short amount you got like 1 more month, or it might have even been 2 weeks. That's why it's like they're terrorizing you. They're like, you haven't gotten a job for like six months. You get to be put on terrorist theater. You got 2 weeks to get a job. We want to see that you got a job. Or you are like, basically, you're kicked out of the class and disconnected from the community, and you can never return. Yeah, like normal, like any other acting class, like normal.
Tell me and tell them, where does it come in about the punishments that you had to suffer?
Oh yeah, well, they fatigue your ass, like with their schedule, they fatigue you. If you don't do something that you're like, you don't have the money, or you don't have time for rehearsals or whatever, the ethics officer takes you like after class, and class could run late. Easily, class could run an hour late, just for whatever reason. So it's midnight. So you go and you basically sit down, and she's there to solve those problems. So whatever punishment you have, where it's writing down all the ways you can make money, there's no excuse, even if you're tired. I mean, you go see Shauna, she will sit you in the office. What's going on with you? You're gonna do this and this and this, and you will rehearse here, in the theater from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. There's just, it's so ridiculous to even make a complaint, like you're back. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you got kids. You make it happen. Like, yeah. And if you fuck up, then you stay there until you figure it out with the ethics officers, like normal.
And you're there from rehearsing from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And then what if you say you're tired the next day?
Oh, you learn very quickly. You learn very quickly.
What if you accidentally fall asleep? You can't control it.
They'll tell you do some exercise, like they'll just give you some formula. They don't care if you're risking, falling asleep at the wheel. They don't give a fuck about that. None of that. They think that you're making excuses. Even if I've heard my teachers say that, like get over cancer with the mind, referring to somebody that needed to leave class for chemo. You just, there's no such thing as sickness. There's no such thing as excuses. There's no such thing as sleep. And they would refer to the people that would complain about this, like the lower level, like the public. And that was another thing. Like, they're like, don't bother explaining this to your family and friends. They're just the public. They don't understand. We're the special ones. So, yeah.
While the pizza is reheating.
It's reheating. Yeah.
I turned the oven back on because I think our pizza, this stream was not about pizza. There. It was clickbait. The pizza was clickbait.
About my pizza. My time in there wasn't, not 1% like these poor other people that had to grow up in there and, are just in there for a long time. I want to make that clear. I'm not traumatized by it. Obviously, all these years later, I am still following Scientology.
Yeah, that's trauma.
Yeah. Definitely it did do something to my brain. And I was very confused.
Even
you
now,
know what I mean? Even now, I'm like,
doubting herself.
Yeah, there's always like like, is that my bad attitude? The doubt is like, you have like a natural thing of like a bad vibe, like, oh, I don't like that. And then you're like, you automatically question your attitude. Like, oh, look at me, like, why did I say I don't like that? That must be my bad attitude. I'm a negative person. I'm a negative, it's the snake, that's what they used to call it, the snake of negativity. Your reactive mind is the snake of negativity.
Thanks for coming and supporting this, hearing this story, hearing Ever's experience, and joining us for this pizza day. Here's 5 more memberships for you guys.
Aww.